Welcome to Murder with the Misses. I'm Amy.
And I'm Haley.
And today we're going to tell you about Christopher Wolfenbarger.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Check out the description for the links of all of our podcast platforms, CashApp, and Buy Me a Coffee. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends.
Tell them. Man, I'm nailing that whole stopping where the music stops. I'm telling you.
Proud mom.
I'm glad y'all are on this journey with me. As I become technologically relevant.
She's evolving.
She is. Glad you're here for it. Now, today we're going to talk about a guy whose last name is hard to pronounce, so Haley calls him Whataburger.
Sorry.
But it's Christopher Wolfenbarger. We're going to get straight into this one because I hadn't heard of this case for some reason until the recent trial, and it's wild. We're going to start back in 2003 after Haley stopped smacking her mic. Just kidding. Carl and Norma Patton are big chillin' in Locust Grove, Georgia, when suddenly Carl is arrested. It seems a cold case from 1977 was being looked into again, and it had DNA evidence. As we all know, DNA testing between 1977 and 2003, well, there's a big difference. So many advancements had taken place in between that time. So they have this blood sample retested, and it was a blood sample that had been taken from the trunk of Carl's car. So when they get a match to their victim and the trunk of Carl's car, they arrest Carl on February 23rd of 2003 for the murder of 31-year-old Liddy Evans. But this wasn't a typical arrest scenario. Within minutes of his arrest, Norma, his wife, is working on a deal to get immunity by turning on Carl. She would later testify that he's the one who told her to do that. Get the deal. Stay free. And Carl was looking at working on a deal of his own. He would tell them whatever they wanted to know. Like, I'll confess, I'll plead guilty. We'll move this right along as quickly as possible if you just do one thing for me. Find my daughter.
Wait, what?
Yeah. This is why it's wild. He said that since the detective who finally got him was so good that he got him, because most serial killers are pretty arrogant. He's like, since you're so good, maybe you can find her too. Now, this was in 2003, remember? And Norma and Carl had not seen their youngest daughter, 21-year-old Melissa, since 1998. As you can probably guess, the Patton household was not a typical household to grow up in. They had two daughters. Tina was the oldest and Melissa was the youngest. According to Norma, just before Melissa's 9th birthday, she told her parents that a family member had molested her. And she said that they went to the police, but nothing ever happened with it. When Melissa was 14 years old, she found the body of a baby in a laundry basket in the house. And Tina was prosecuted for that. So you can see that there's some things going on at home that are not typical, right? Melissa also had a lot going on, obviously. At 15 years old, she started dating Christopher Wolfenbarger. She would run away from home to be with him all the time. And Norma said that every time she came back home, Carl would spank her. Now, Norma went another direction. She put Melissa on birth control. But she found out later that Melissa was only pretending to take that birth control when Melissa ended up pregnant. Now, mind you, she's 15. She would marry Chris and end up having 2 kids with him, mind you. She is, like I said, young. And this was not a good relationship for her. Many people would testify that they believed it was physically abusive when Melissa would show up with bruises. And then when asked about them, she would make an excuse, of course, as to how she got them. This is classic we see in domestic violence situations, sadly. And then that, of course, would evolve to her wearing long sleeves and things to avoid people seeing them, so then she wouldn't have to explain what was going on, which is also another red flag if you're showing up in the middle of August in a long sleeve t-shirt. You know what I mean? Red flag. She even signed temporary custody of her 2 kids over to Chris's parents in 1996, which some believe was part of the control that Chris had over her.
And she never filed charges or anything?
Well, she actually did. So she did. On June 19th of 1998, there was an incident where Chris had allegedly knocked her down and then drug her by her hair either down the sidewalk or the street. I've heard it both ways in court. And it probably means the same thing because sidewalks go along streets. So either way, she did file for a protective order in that case. And in July, both Melissa and Chris signed over permanent custody of their kids to Chris's parents. So there's a big question as to, did she do that of her own volition, or was this him, being like, control. Either way, when they went to court for the protective order, Norma says that Chris asked to speak to Melissa alone, and then she ended up leaving the courthouse with Chris that day. They got back together, but they were on again, off again, so they didn't stay together. She was working at Waffle House, and she was actually seeing a coworker there a couple months later. So they were off again pretty quick. By November, she called her family on Thanksgiving like she did every special occasion, according to Norma. She told her mom on that phone call that the only thing she wanted for Christmas was a picture of her and her papa. Now, I think she called him Pawpaw. It's a picture that they had taken back when he was still alive. And so Norma actually had a copy of it made for her, getting ready to give it to her at Christmas. But Melissa didn't make it to Christmas. And when they hadn't heard from her in February on Norma's birthday, they started to worry. Norma would say that she did try to call the cops and report her missing, but was told that because Melissa was an adult and because she was married, that Norma was not able to be the one who reported her missing.
Ugh. See, that's not right.
No, it's not. So believe what you want on that one, because Norma was either finally able to report her missing, or Norma actually reported her missing for the first time in January of 2000. So there's actual record of it in January of 2000, over a year after she was last seen or heard from by her family. And if you think about these dates, this was just before Carl was arrested. So he's still out in the wild, living his life, working as a roofer. So many believe that Norma actually did not try to report her missing before then because she was worried it would bring attention to Carl.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, out in the wild, he was out in the wild. Chris told police that Melissa moved out around Christmas of 1998. She was walking down the street sometime in March or April of 1999, and he saw her. And she didn't look good, like she had been using drugs or something. And he did tell them that he knew she was talking to some guy at the Waffle House, but she didn't go home with Chris that day. And that was the last time he saw her.
Well, what about like Waffle House? When was the last time they saw her?
Right, because work, right?
Yeah.
Well, old Thomas, the guy that she was seeing from Waffle House at the time, said that he was at work with her when Chris came up there, and Melissa, who had been staying with him for 4 or 5 days at that point, told Thomas that she had to go home. So she ended up leaving with Chris that day from the Waffle House. He said he peeled out of the parking lot and all kinds of stuff. It was a wild story. And that was in December. And that's the last time he saw her in person. And I say in person because he did see her on a deck of playing cards when he was in jail. So you know how sometimes they'll put missing people or unsolved cases, cold cases, they'll actually put them on cards and distribute them out to prisons.
Yeah.
So that people may see that person and maybe it sparks a memory, or they may want to, narc on somebody that they know did it. You know what I mean? It helps bring awareness. And she was the King of Diamonds. So he remembers seeing her, and that's how he found out that she was missing, because he saw her on those cards when he was in jail, because he had no idea. And since she's been missing all this time, Chris actually even filed for divorce in 2001. And that brings us to 2003, when Carl gets arrested. He's arrested February 23rd. He confessed, and Norma, she's holding up her end of the bargain for her immunity deal. So we know what happened in his case. On March 8th of 2003, Carl pled guilty to shooting Liddy Evans and his best friend, firefighter Joe Cleveland, with a shotgun in his living room on December 17th of 1977. So, long time ago. Carl and Norma then put the bodies in a van, wrapped in sleeping bags, and threw them into the Flint River. They were found within days, but Norma testified that after they dumped the bodies in the river, She then went on to clean the van while Carl burned all the furniture that had their blood on it.
Okay. So Norma helped.
Norma helped. She was an accessory. Yes. And she confessed, and she put it all on Carl because she just helped clean up. She helped dispose the bodies and clean up. So he goes to prison. She gets a year of probation and $1,000 fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay.
Stiff
I noticed
penalties.
you put emphasis on his best friend.
It was his best friend, his own best friend. Joe was his best friend. And we're going to talk a little bit about Joe some more here in just a second after we hear from today's sponsor.
Okay.
Maybe. Just kidding. Here you go.
If you're in a heated argument with your dryer, don't worry. You'll both cool down eventually. Or maybe you just need a washer and dryer. Don't get agitated. Take a load off.
Get your laundry set from My Laundry Solutions and let them iron out your problems. If you live in an apartment, get your set from them. They service them, and they have locations in Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. The most recent area is Lubbock, Texas, around the Tech Terrace area, with more locations coming soon.
So give them a call today, 800-535-4411.
Or go online to mylaundrysolutions.com.
And let them wash your troubles away.
Let them wash your troubles away. Yeah, so here we are. Norma helped. We know Norma helped. Now, why would Carl kill them, right? Why are you killing him in your living room? He was your best friend. Turns out that a little over a month before that, so November 12th of 1977, Carl and Joe had shot and killed 45-year-old Fred Wyatt and 45-year-old Betty Jo Eflin. Fred's common-law wife, Marie, said that Fred was cheating with Betty Jo, so she paid Carl $15,000 to kill them. She paid him out of the life insurance money. Bro.
Oh my gosh.
Bro. Carl and Joe had put Betty Jo's body in the Flint River, but they put Fred in his car and left him on the railroad tracks where the car would eventually be hit by a train. So it looked like an accidental death. That's how you get that life insurance money.
Mm-hmm.
Norman and Carl believed that Joe was then going around telling people what happened. They know for sure that he told Liddy because that was his girlfriend. So then they had to go too because they were the only ones that knew. Bro. Then, after pleading guilty to killing these 4 people, Carl then confessed that he had actually also killed Marie's first husband in March of 1973, Richard Jackson. Marie paid him for that one too. So Carl was dubbed the Flint River Killer and started serving his 5 life sentences. Man.
Mm-mm.
He did his part by pleading guilty of all that, remember? So he's like, okay, your turn. Now you go. Go find my daughter. They find out that the morgue is holding on to some unidentified remains. On April 29th of 1999, a man had been walking down Avon Avenue. He had gone to the bank, and he was on his way back. On his way, he found a human skull in the road.
Just laying in the street?
Just laying in the street. That's what he said. So he took a stick, and he moved it over to the side so that it wouldn't get ran over. And he got the cops on the scene. They bring out cadaver dogs, after this, not same day. They bring them out, and they search the woods that are next to it. And on June 3rd, they found black trash bags with the body that belonged to that skull. Well, everything but the torso. They never found the torso. When they examined the skull, they used this chart to compare the size, and they determined it to be of a male based on its dimensions, I guess. They get Melissa's dental records in 2003 and bump it up to the remains that they found. So thanks to Carl getting arrested, they were able to positively identify those as the remains of Melissa. She had paint chips and synthetic fibers, like from a bath mat or carpet, on her body too, but they couldn't match them to anything in the house that she and Chris had lived in at the time that she went missing. Because, of course, this is several years later, so you can't expect that nobody repainted or got
Yeah.
rid of a bath mat or redid the carpet. You know what I mean? They found out that at the time, though, when Melissa went missing, Chris worked at Action Glass. That was right across the street from where the skull was found. So they're immediately like, first of all, they're going to look at the husband first anyway. Significant other is always the first to go to. Somebody close, somebody who benefits from it, things like that. They got their chain that they go down. So he worked right across the street from where it was found. And then they found out that he got fired from that job because he stole a saw. Like, I don't know, maybe one you would use to dismember a body.
Ooh.
The saw was never returned to them, and they never found that saw. Nobody knows where it is. Chris would tell the police that he did borrow the saw, and they just thought that he had stole it. So they fired him because of it.
Okay, usually when you borrow something,
Mm-hmm.
that means you asked if you could
Right.
borrow it.
Right. That's
Doesn't
what borrow
sound-
means.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could Google that real quick and do the definition, but I would
Guess what?
think
Oh, yeah. Guess what, Chris? It's 2025. We're going to Google it.
we can Google everything now. Yes. Because someone there would have had to have been able to say, oh yeah, Chris asked if he could take it. And I said, yeah. Nobody said that. Nobody knew anything about it. And if you don't ask and you take something that doesn't belong to you, it's called stealing. So he stole that saw. I don't know why he's trying to get out of it, but he totally stole that saw. Anyways, the case eventually does go cold for Melissa. They don't have anything tying Chris to it. They don't have anything tying anybody to it. So it goes cold. Then in 2023, Zone 7 did a podcast on the case. A year later, in 2024, a woman hears the podcast and called the police, giving them some secret information. They never said exactly what she said to police, so if anybody knows that, please let me know. I want to know what cracked this case wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Because after she talks to these cops and tells them whatever she tells them, they go and arrest Chris. So they have body cam footage. We watched it in court where they go into his house, but he's not there. But they don't give up. They're looking in and around things, and they actually find him hiding in a little secret compartment behind what looks like a wine rack. Some say dishwasher, some say, but it looked like a wine rack to me. And the cop is like, he's right back there. I can see him.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was great. So he finally went on trial for this case literally the other day, but there's a glaring problem. Well, the other day from when we're recording it, you won't hear it for a couple of weeks, but there's a glaring problem. Maybe you all have heard it already, or maybe you haven't heard it already. Because I sat through this trial. I found myself taking my notes on how everyone thought that there was domestic violence in the marriage. We talked about it. Chris had been confronted by her family about it. They've said, we see the bruises. What's going on? They talk about how Chris gave 2 different time frames for the last time that he saw her. Once being like right before her skull was found in the road. So you can't tell me that he saw her just a couple of months before that. Anyways, they say all these things. We talked about Carl. We even heard all about Carl and what he got into.
The serial killer?
We've talked about the serial killer. And I will say, real quick, that Marie's daughter actually thanked Carl in court when he was in court for his shit, saying that her dad and stepdad were both very abusive, and she was grateful to him for killing them. So take that with a grain of salt.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we've heard about Carl. But the evidence section of my notes stayed blank. We have seen circumstantial cases end in a guilty verdict before. It's not unheard of. But usually there's more to go on. So I kept waiting for the bomb to drop. Maybe they're saving it. Maybe it's going to be the last witness that testifies. It's like, boom, here it is. And it didn't happen. And maybe that's why it took the jury all of 2 hours and 12 minutes to come back with a verdict of not guilty for Chris. I mean, he had a built-in defense. Her dad was a convicted serial killer. Whether he had anything to do with Melissa's death or not, that puts some serious reasonable doubt into Chris's case. You can't deny that. And then when you take into account that there's no direct evidence And you have over 20-year-old circumstantial stuff where people's like, well, I'm pretty sure they were in an abusive relationship. And I'm pretty sure they know she had a protective order against him. But they're like, I'm pretty sure she might have been on drugs. I'm pretty sure. But nothing says he was in this area or he did this to her or he was seen doing this or he, we found the saw and it had blood on it. None of that happened. So they already had an uphill battle, and I don't think they brought what they needed to bring.
Mm-mm. And, what about the kids?
Yeah. So, and now they have kids that are adults. It's been so long since she died. They are adults and testified in trial. They were raised by Chris's side of the family, of course, because they had custody. The daughter testified that she remembered going to a funeral for Melissa, but they didn't tell the kids it was a funeral. They literally just was like, here we go. We're going to a celebration of life or whatever. And the kids didn't understand what that was. They were probably thinking it was a birthday party or something. But the daughter, the oldest, she recognized the woman from that celebration they went to as one of the, like when she's looking around at pictures that are hanging in her grandma's living room, she's seeing that woman. And so she started asking, who's that woman? We just went to her deal. Like, why is she on the wall? Who is she? And all of a sudden, those pictures were taken down and put in storage. So Chris's mom would testify about that. Of course, they asked her about it. And she said that they were just old pictures that they took down and refreshed with new ones, like you do. Just, it wasn't nefarious. Wasn't trying to keep anything from them. It was just time to change out the pictures. Weird. But either way, they eventually knew that she was their mom. Like they eventually found out that was their mom and that she didn't leave them on her own volition. Like I think that's one of the hardest things for some of these cases when the victim has kids. Those kids think that the person left them if they don't know what happened to the body. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're not told, they just think that the person left them and they didn't want them. But that's not the case. And Chris did move in with his parents at one point. So then they found out that was their dad, even though they're not being raised by them. So it's really, they had a really weird family dynamic when they were growing up. Because I'm pretty sure they called his mom and dad mom and dad. And then it changed to when they realized they were actually grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Norma had limited contact with the kids all this time. And Norma has caught some heat too because of her role in Carl's murders, her fight for his release. She has fought for that. Her lack of reporting her missing for so long, Melissa, that is. I mean, we could go on, but we won't. Because regardless of how you feel about Norma and Carl, Melissa was the victim here. She didn't do anything to them.
Yeah, it's not her fault that she had shitty parents.
Exactly. So that's where we are in this case. Chris found not guilty, and that's it. Carl did die in December of 2024, so it'd be kind of pointless to try to investigate him now because they can't prosecute him, first of all, but they ruled him out as a suspect back in 2003 anyways. So anything that they would have been able to get on him, long gone. It's gone. And you're not getting a confession out of him if he did do it because he maintained his innocence all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they have any more suspects. They haven't said anything about anybody else. But then now they have a built-in defense. That's another thing. If they come at somebody else and they're like, hey, we think you did this, they can say, oh, really? Because you thought Chris did this. Remember when you tried him for it?
Yeah.
How are you so sure I did it now? Like, you better come with something. You'd have to have something concrete to be able to get somebody after this. But that's where we're at. Sadly, this is probably one of those cases that will never be solved. I guess if you believe Chris did it, then it'd be better to say that this is one that they won't be able to prosecute anymore. And it sucks. They did say Carl wept when Norma told him that they identified those remains as Melissa.
Oh.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't believe he had anything to do with it. Whatever. You got any final thoughts on this one? That's all I got on it.
Before you told me he cried, I was going to be like,
fuck him.
I mean, if this Chris guy was abusive,
right,
and dad held a grudge,
right,
it could have been a framing thing, but I don't know, the crying's different.
But could he kill his own daughter to frame that? Wouldn't you just kill Chris?
Yeah, at that point, I mean.
Yeah. Here we are planning murders. Listen.
But Chris, I'm not going to lie, you look a little guilty.
Hear us out. Chris is the one who had the most.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And has a history of being abusive.
Yeah. And they were broke up and she was seeing another guy. Now, when he came to the Waffle House that last day that Thomas saw them, Thomas said that he showed up during the shift and Melissa and him talked for a minute and she went back to the back and was crying. So he went out front and told Chris, until she clocks out, she's mine. Till 9 o'clock tonight, you need to leave. She's mine. And so he came back at 9 o'clock that night and picked her up. And that's when he peeled out of the parking lot. And that's the last time they saw her.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's what he said.
And you know, what if she was like, well, I like him.
I like him better. You know what he doesn't do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was like, well, if I can't have her.
Nobody can. Another classic.
Another classic.
Yes. So I'm thinking, yeah, he looks the most guilty for this, but unless you can prove it.
Exactly.
Damn. All right. I think that's all we have on this one. So if you like our content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
And don't forget to tell your friends as always.
As always. Okay, bye.
Bye.